Thank you for tuning in. Please join me as I go through the repair, restoration, and bench testing of my Pioneer A-27 integrated amplifier, one of the finest amplifiers Pioneer ever produced. If you enjoy vintage audio equipment, you've come to the right spot. Please subscribe and hit that notification bell, as well as giving me a big thumbs up if you like this video, and share it with others. There is a risk of serious injury or death from electrical shock working on this equipment. If you're not comfortable with working on the equipment, please do not take the cover off and consult a professional. I'd like to talk to you first about the Pioneer A-27 integrated amplifier. It was part of a high-end series of Pioneer separate components. It was called Series 20, and a couple of the amplifiers from that series, the M22 and M25, are very highly sought after. Believe it or not though, this A-27 was the most expensive unit in that series, and it actually retailed for $1,250, and this series was produced from 76 to 1980. So this, for an example, the SX 1980 receiver was retailing at $1,295. You know, so this was expensive stuff. This was high-end stuff, and actually, I don't remember ever seeing M-Series Pioneer stuff. In 76 to 80, this was kind of like my heyday of going stereo shop to stereo shop. It's rated at 120 watts per channel, but it runs Class A up to about 30 watts per channel, and then it switches on the fly. Unlike Yamaha CA-2010 that I just did a video on, this one automatically changes from A to AB when you get over about 30 watts a channel. When the peaks get above there, it goes into AB mode. So there's no switch on the front like the Yamaha. This A-27 incorporates a lot of the circuit design from the M22 and the M25, but it was put in a box with a normal preamp. The other preamps in the Series 20 line were really minimalistic preamplifiers. And this one has all the features any preamp has. Now you can bypass all that stuff. It's got switches to do that. But if you want tone controls and the such, it's got it. As I said, I just wanted to give you a little bit of background on the Pioneer A-27 before we got started here with what I did in the restoration and the repair. And I'd also like to ask you guys to comment down below. Do you guys ever remember the Pioneer Series 20? I mean, again, I walked through the stores, I remember the SX receivers, I remember the SA integrateds, I remember the TX tuners. Did you guys ever go into a Pioneer shop and see an A-27? I'm just curious. Let's get started with the restoration. This Pioneer A-27 is in pretty good cosmetic shape, but it needs some repair and restoration. I've got the top cover off, I've got the faceplate off, and this will, I've noticed a few bulbs that are burned out. They're 40-year-old bulbs. What do you expect? So I've replaced them with LEDs. I think that'll work better. The faceplate, I've got that off. Got the bottom cover off. It's always a good idea to take a lot of pictures before you start unhooking stuff so you can get it back together. I've started to take the modules out for electrolytic capacitor replacement, also to clean the switches and the pots. This unit comes apart fairly easily to do that. As I said, there's a lot of 40-year-old electrolytic capacitors that need to come out. Some are audio grade capacitors. I used a lot of Nishinikon capacitors in this restoration. You can just about get all the boards wherever you need them. Quite a bit of play in the cables. There's some pretty tight spots though to get in where these wires are wire wrapped underneath the various boards. Just got to be careful in there. It's always a good idea when you do a little bit of work, try it out. before you go on. I used some modern test equipment to figure out what transistors I had, you know, various diodes. Like I said, again, you can get these boards out and get them cleaned up with some Deoxit or whatever your favorite cleaner is fairly easily. Some of the boards pull straight out of the unit, and obviously that makes it pretty easy to replace the components. Some of them, I mean, you can tell some of these were subjected to quite a bit of heat over the years. They're very close to those heat sinks, and they get fairly hot there. So I've got them all replaced, and hopefully it's ready for another 40 years. As I said, there's some audio grade capacitors in here also. Once again, it all comes apart fairly easily with these plug-in connectors. Also, make sure you clean up those pins. Again, everything's pretty darn neat in this unit. This is the power supply I've rebuilt with PW series capacitors. Power amplifier taken apart, assembly, and output transistors. I'll replace some of the mica transistor insulators, clean up the old thermal compound, do something that's needed since it left Japan 40 years ago. These are the original power transistors, so this will help them stay cool and hopefully last another 40 years. I've got a lot of it out here on the table. Again, you've got enough room to stretch these cables out and do the work without too much trouble. The filter capacitors are going to be changed out because they've started to leak. These were about as bad as you get, and all four of them were in pretty rough shape. Certainly, it was a requirement to change those out. Fortunately, you're still able to get replacements for these capacitors. Don't know how much longer that'll go, but you can see the goop that went all over the wiring. Not a good thing. So here's the new filter capacitors I'll be using. A little bit shorter, but the same diameter, so they fit right in there nice. I had to do a little modification to make the holes a little bit bigger, but all the brackets fit perfect. Everything was just as good as it could be, and put everything in and kind of tidy it up. And again, you know, talking about the DC offset and setting the bias on the amplifier before I put it all back together. Again, these things being 40 years old, there's all kinds of issues. The ground was extremely loose. This was a little bit of a pain to get to. Had to you know, loosen up the back panel and you know, do a little more work than I thought I was going to have to get to it. But anyway, I got to it and tightened up the ground and of course cleaned up the back of the unit. Got the faceplate back on, about ready to call this restoration repair complete. I'll do a little preliminary testing on the test bench before I hook it up to my audio analyzer. You know, just make sure all the controls are still working, make sure everything's put back in neatly. I've got her all wrapped up, and let's head to some bench testing. I've got my Pioneer A-27 up on the test bench, the one that we just saw in the previous video. If you take a look at the modern equipment, I swear they just send them to people's apartments. Nobody tests them. You older guys out there, you younger guys won't remember maybe, but there was actually audio magazines like Stereo Review and Audio and High Fidelity and several others that they got this equipment and they bench tested it. They made sure it would meet the specifications that the manufacturer said it would. Today, I don't even know if they do that. It doesn't seem like they do it, or not very often, because the person review it is in his apartment. He hooks it up and he talks for a few minutes about what it sounded like. But he doesn't in any way go through and do any sort of testing. And you'd think in today's world, well, I guess the new equipment manufacturers don't test their equipment. Well, of course they do. Do you ever see their facilities? They've got hundreds of thousands, some of them millions of dollars of test equipment. The engineers who design the modern equipment still use test equipment, just like they did back 40 or 50 years ago. But for some reason, the people who test the equipment have no ability to test it. All they do is they hook it up and they listen to it. So I think that's a big thing that's missing. in today's world is just somebody, and maybe I'm mistaken, I just don't see it out there. I go on there and I take a look at the reviews of stuff, and there's no mention. All they do is give you the manufacturer's specifications. There you go, I had my rant. Let's get started with the testing of this Pioneer A-27. I'm letting it warm up a little bit. Just let it sit here and warm itself up before we push it too hard. So both channels are running here, just about 1.5 watts. I'm going to start turning the volume control here a little bit and see how well they track together. I'll go up a couple notches here. And, you know, very good. There's the two channels. The left channel's running 110 watts continuous, and the right channel 108. Go over to the distortion. On the left channel, we're running about 0.01, and the right channel 0.01. Pretty amazing, huh? I mean, really excellent. And I mean, you're never going to be running this thing continuous like this. I'm just changing back and forth between the channels. 107 continuous, 0.01, 109 continuous from the other channel, 0.01. So we'll go back and look at both channels just together again. And now this is just showing you the wattage from each channel. So, I mean, that is outstanding. We're going to see where she clips at. We're at 113, 116, 119, 22, 125, 128, 131 at 0.01, 134, 137. Okay, she tipped over. She's warm, but not ridiculous. The load resistors are hotter than it is. No worries. If it was this warm all the time, it'd be fine. But it just went through a lot more than anybody would ever put this through in a stereo system. But that is just a testament to the quality that these units were engineered and built to. So this amplifier clips at about 137 watts per channel. It's rated at 120. And remember, it's over 40 years old. So that's pretty amazing. I certainly wouldn't run it up that high all the time. You know, this unit's over 40 years old. Pretty amazing that it can still perform and still do 137 watts and rated at 120. Now it is rebuilt. I'm not worried about it. Made to do it, and this is why this stuff survives. As I said, you would never run this amplifier at that wattage. If you did, your speakers are gone. But it's just a testament to the quality that these amplifiers were built to and engineered. And then when they spec'd them out, what'd they do? Ultra conservative. 40 plus years later, this unit is still able to output 137 watts per channel at 0.01% distortion. Just incredible. I'm so impressed with this A-27. And like so many of the vintage audio pieces, it outperforms what it's spec'd to do. What can you say? I guess it set in that new thermal compound that I put in there. Rebuilt, and there's no reason that this amplifier cannot make it another 40 years. As a hobbyist who repairs, restores, and collects vintage audio equipment, I thank you for watching my Pioneer A-27 integrated amplifier video. If you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate a big thumbs up down below. For you non-subscribers, if you'd like to see more videos like this, please subscribe. And for my present subscribers, thank you very much. Y'all have a good day.